untold story of the craziest founder that you have never heard of, and that is the founder of Red Bull. So this video just came out on the Founders Podcast. We haven't listened to it yet, so we're going to be listening to it for the first time here with you guys, and then also providing our thoughts and commentary throughout. So without further ado, let's hear about the founder of
Mateschitz is
Red
one of the
Bull.
most successful entrepreneurs of our age, a man who single-handedly changed the landscape of the beverage industry by creating not just a new brand, but a whole new category, the energy drink. He is the visionary who brought the world Red Bull. In return for his innovation, the world has made him very, very rich. Over the last few years, he was taking anywhere from 500 million to 800 million a year in annual dividends, and he had a net worth somewhere between 20 and 30 billion dollars. Mateschitz also runs an efficient enterprise. In 2010, Red Bull employed just
Also,
7,758
guys,
people,
in case you
which
guys
works out
don't
to more
know,
than 667,000 in revenue per person.
oh,
This
let me,
success is the realization of a business plan
I guess
that
it's
eschews
still playing
conventional
here.
advertising in favor of marketing through its own events, shows, sports teams, and publications. Red Bull has produced its own TV programs, films, magazines, websites, and a steady diet of videos online featuring snowboarders, rally cars, surfers, cliff divers, and concerts, and a guy jumping from
All right, I
space.
just learned a lesson that I can't
Mateschitz
click
calls the
the
multimedia
AirPods to
assault
pause it, or
one
else
of the
if
most
I'm
important line extensions so far. As a major content provider, it is our goal to communicate and distribute the world of Red Bull in all major segments, from TV to print to new media.
there we go.
Red Bull also owns 4 soccer teams. They have a NASCAR team and 2 Formula One racing teams. He finances the annual $200 million cost of his F1 teams out of the company's healthy operating income. And this is what he said about that. In literal financial terms, our sports teams are not yet profitable, but in value terms, they are. The total editorial media value plus the media assets created around the teams. That's such a good insight. Plus the media assets created around the teams are superior to pure advertising expenditures. He then launches into a spiel that he's been delivering for the past 25 years. He explains that Red Bull is not just a drink. Instead, it's a philosophy, one seemingly derived from his own outlook on life, and a functional product used to improve strength and performance and to revitalize the body and mind. Those are his words. He is also quite serious, prone to beginning sentences with the phrase, "it is a must," as in it is a must to believe in one's product. If this was just a marketing gimmick, it would never work. And it is something that he believed on because he worked on Red Bull for over the last 40 years of his life. He just recently passed away. That's why I wanted to do this episode now. This is a little bit about the beginnings of
I
how he
love this
discovered this
guy's
idea. He was on
philosophy.
a chance trip to Thailand in 1982, which would prove to be a turning point in his life. He was curious to know what attracted the locals there to an uncarbonated tonic, which they called a word in Thai I'm not even going to try to pronounce, which literally translates to Red Bull. He tried some of this himself and found that it instantly cured his jet lag. Not long after that, he was sitting at the bar at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Hong Kong, and he was reading a magazine. In the magazine, it mentioned that the top corporate taxpayer in Japan that year was the maker of such tonics. Suddenly, the idea hit him. He would sell that stuff in the West. He then approached a Thai businessman who was selling the tonic in Southeast Asia and suggested that the two introduce the drink to the rest of the world. With one crucial change, it would be carbonated. This is going to be his partner's. His last name, I'm going to guess, is Yuvidaha. And he liked the idea, and so the two agreed to
I
invest
wouldn't have known how to pronounce
$500,000
that either.
apiece to establish a 49-49 partnership, with the remaining 2% going to Yuvidaha's son. So when I said earlier that he was paying dividends, somewhere between 500 and 800 million to himself a year, and his net worth was, somewhere between 20 and 30 billion dollars, that is from this 49% that he owned of Red Bull. In addition to adding carbonation, he also positioned it differently. This would allow for his product positioning masterstroke. He would sell Red Bull as an ultra premium drink in a category all of its own. At $2 a can, it was far and away the most expensive carbonated drink on the shelves. This is what he said about that. If we only had a 15% price premium, we'd merely be a premium brand among soft drinks and not a different category altogether. At this point, most histories of Red Bull tend to depart from Mateschitz and focus on Red Bull itself, which is exactly how he wants it. A curious hybrid of a mogul, Mateschitz has a zest for life that rivals Richard Branson's, but his obsession with controlling information puts him closer to Steve Jobs. Like the Apple founder, Mateschitz pulls the strings behind a consumer cult, and cults rely on message control, Mateschitz is notoriously secretive. He is close to some of Austria's most prominent people. This part made me laugh. He is close to some of Austria's most prominent people, though Mateschitz says he doesn't place a premium on collecting friends or socializing. I don't believe in 50 friends. I believe in a smaller number. Nor do I care about society events. It is the most useless use of time. When I go out, from time to time, it's just to convince myself that I'm not missing out on a lot. And so the little that he does speak, he says very interesting things. This is another thing that I thought was very interesting. The success of Red Bull defies logic in one important regard. It doesn't taste very good. Mateschitz says he doesn't care about the taste issue then. He didn't care about the taste issue then, and he doesn't care about it now. This is what he says. It's not just another flavored sugar water differentiated by color or taste or flavor. It is an efficiency product. I'm talking about improving endurance, concentration, reaction time, speed, vigilance, and emotional status. Taste is of no importance whatsoever. That part actually shocked me. And Red Bull, I mean, I wouldn't say it tastes great, but it certainly doesn't taste bad. I think maybe the author is exaggerating a little bit here. Mateschitz has proved his marketing genius, especially in the era. This is another funny thing. Especially in the era of crisis management, with his early decision to foster rumors about Red Bull's content instead of trying to squash them. I'm going to go into a lot more detail later on about this, but I want to give you an overview. This is what I'm trying to do, give you an overview of who he was and his approach to company building, which I found fascinating, by the way. I've been texting friends nonstop. I was like, I cannot believe all this stuff. This is an example of that. So he wants to foster rumors. That is just free. We're going to go into, Christian Dior's comment on this, which I just covered a few weeks ago. He's just like, oh, this is just free propaganda. You don't try to squash them, foster them. And so in the early days of Red Bull, you have all this, like, why is Red Bull so effective? Why is it giving me so much energy? Why is it letting me to party all night? Because I was it really spread in clubs to begin with. And so he says his early decision to foster rumors about Red Bull's content instead of trying to quash them. Tales began to circulate that taurine, which is one of the main ingredients of Red Bull, was derived from bull testicles, or even that it was bull semen. Oh, the company let the gossip travel unchecked and even set up a page devoted to the rumors on its website. He has an incredible quote about this. He says the most dangerous thing for a branded product is low interest. That reminds me of Edwin Land, founder of Polaroid, Steve Jobs' hero, and the patron saint of Founders Podcast. He said something that was fascinating. And he says, the test of invention is the power of an inventor to push your invention through, not in the face of staunch opposition, which most people think, right? But staunch indifference. Edwin Land, like Mateschitz, would tell you that indifference is your enemy. If they're talking about your product, that is a good thing, even if they think that it's coming from the secret ingredient is bull testicles. Was this all by design? Did he really anticipate that a combination of rumors and public outcry would play such a big part in driving early sales? Even think about that. I'm going to pause real quick. I was like, think about if he said, okay, well, I have a new drink and there's like some caffeine in it, some sugar, maybe some B12 or some other vitamins. I've already forgot what he said. But if somebody whispers like, hey, there's this new energy drink and the energy comes from bull testicles, even if, one, I wouldn't drink it because of that, but I won't forget it.
Would you guys drink that?
Powerful insight.
That was all you knew about Red Bull?
Was it all by design? Did he really anticipate that a combination of rumor and public outcry would play such a big part in driving early sales? They're talking about the fact that Red Bull was forbidden to be sold in several European countries that he initially tried to launch in. Mateschitz is emphatic. Yes, we expected it. It was part of the strategy from the beginning. We would make the brand interesting enough that people wanted to get their hands on it. Red Bull's marketing campaign has always been its claim that it can improve athletic performance. To prove it, the company took a page out of Gatorade's book and targeted athletes, except with a twist. Mateschitz zeroed in on the extreme sports crowd. Okay, so that idea is not new. I've done multiple podcasts and read multiple biographies of the founders of companies like Adidas, Nike, and then Vans shoe. If you realize, like, Adidas started getting a lot of traction by sponsoring they're making athletic shoes, so they sponsor athletes. Nike sees the success they're doing, and so they do the same thing. There's a lot of stories about them competing in the early days of Nike. But what was fascinating is Paul Van Duren, who I did a podcast on a long time ago, he's the founder of Vans. What he did, he's like, well, I'm not making athletic shoes, but I like the idea that Adidas and Nike used to gain traction, initial sales traction. And so he didn't copy the what, he copied the how. And so instead of going to, Olympians or basketball players, whatever, he found an underserved niche, which was skateboarders. And so he went out and tried to sign in the early skateboarding industry. And that was a huge influence on the early success of Vans. And so you see mateschitz using a very similar playbook from Gatorade and then other products that also were very successful targeting athletes. Today, Red Bull underwrites more than 500 athletes in 97 sports. This data is about what I'm working off of is about 15 years old, so it's probably much higher than that. Like everything else at Red Bull, the negotiations that lead to these sponsorship deals are unorthodox as well. Windsurfer Robbie Naish recalls the first time he met mateschitz almost 20 years ago. We talked in the courtyard of his office, and pretty soon we realized that we were both really into cars. That was the end of our business meeting because he wanted to show me his Ferrari GTO. So we went driving off into the mountains, and after 15 minutes, he pulled over, got out, and told me to drive back. I didn't want to. That's $1 million car. But he said I was either going to drive the Ferrari back or walk back. I was so scared that I drove it like my grandmother. The lines between Red Bull athletes, and Red Bull events are blurry on purpose. Another great idea. This is why I kept texting people about this guy. To mateschitz, it's just one big image campaign with many manifestations. Let me read that again. The lines between Red Bull athletes, and Red Bull events are blurry on purpose. To mateschitz, it's just one big image campaign with many manifestations. Potential customers might actually attend one of the dozens of global events that Red Bull puts on. It could be a Red Bull soapbox race in Los Angeles, or a motocross spectacular in Brazil the week after. This is what they said about that. This is fun stuff, and it's a lot more interesting than writing a check to buy 30 seconds during the Super Bowl. Despite the fact that he's approaching 70, he maintains quite a clip. He still moves like an athlete. He rides horses, rides a motorcycle, pilots his planes, and last year competed in an off-road motorcycle race. He has long insisted that he has no plans to sell or take Red Bull public. It's not a question of money, he said. It's a question of fun. Can you imagine me at a shareholders meeting? Mateschitz has certainly created some enviable havens for himself, like Richard Branson. He has his own private island in Fiji. He bought it off of Malcolm Forbes. When I asked him what motivated him to buy a vacation home so far away, he resorts to quoting Malcolm Forbes himself. He gave a nice answer, which was, doesn't everybody want their own South Pacific island? Well, in my case, he was right. I did. Mateschitz also says that he's always been attracted to the idea of having his own independent state, the country of Red Bull, which would have the shortest set of laws in the world. The rules would be simple. Nobody tells you what you have to do, only what you don't have to do. Okay, so that was an excerpt not from the book that I'm going to talk to you about today. That's an excerpt from this long-form piece in Bloomberg called Red Bull's Billionaire Maniac. Before we get into the book, I want to tell you about a conversation I just had with one of the greatest living entrepreneurs, and I want to tell you about the presenting sponsor of this podcast, Ramp. I just spent time with Todd Graves, who's the founder of Raising Cane's. Todd owns over 90% of his business, and his business is worth at least $20 billion.
All right, guys. So I oh my God, zoomed in here. I accidentally disconnected my AirPods again, but I think that this is actually a great time to go into commentary. So I'm gonna try and do a little bit of multitasking here, get the AirPod back connected, and then explain the process.
Todd is obsessed.
Okay, here we go. Alrighty.
About staying in the details.
Okay, so I think a couple of interesting things about Todd, or not Todd. Todd is the CEO of Cane's. The interesting thing about the founder of Red Bull, I think that across these different people that you see who've built these big empires, whether it's, this guy with Red Bull, whether it's the tech moguls, whether it's the people who built these massive casinos and gambling empires, they take very different approaches in many ways. There are many similarities, like the foundation, like, okay, they're working really hard. They're able to see things in a different way. But this guy with Red Bull is on the extreme of lateral thinking. And what do I mean by that of lateral thinking? So he basically, everyone looks at Red Bull and they just look purely at the product. And they say, okay, it's an energy drink company. But even as a consumer, you see Red Bull and you get this type of a feeling that makes it where it's much more than an energy drink company. The guy even talks about how the product doesn't even taste good, you know? So I think that what he was looking at is he wasn't looking at it as an energy drink. It was almost like he was creating a new category. He was talking about how, the fundamentals of just the product might be losing money, but when you look at all of the value that they have on the media side, that it's actually profitable. Like whereas these other companies might be paying millions of dollars for a Super Bowl ad or you know, doing all these other things that businesses will traditionally do to get customers, which makes sense. He was very innovative where he was saying, okay, well, we can do much more than that and look at this in a way where we can capture attention and we can monetize it through a product. Um, but it's a different type of thinking that, at least across other competitors or other energy drink companies, you're not really seeing that. Um, I think that that is a testament to why he's created such a big company and why he's been able to grow Red Bull for so many years. And now Red Bull events, all of that. So I'll let the video continue playing now that we got the tech back working.
Of his
We're going to
business,
skip through this
he
ad
told
here.
me that how you easy to use corporate cards for your today. That is ramp.com. Now let's get back into the book. The book that I am going to talk to you about today, as far as I know, is the only biography ever written about the founder of Red Bull, and it is only available in German. My friend Cameron Priest, who's been a longtime listener of Founders, and he's probably over the years sent me, no exaggeration, at least 40 great biography recommendations, actually helped me translate it into English. The translation's not the greatest, spending several hours reading what is technically English, but in a way the words were organized. It's almost like you're reading a different language. So what I did is I just pulled out a bunch of highlights and tried to rewrite them into explaining the main ideas that mateschitz used to build, one of the most valuable private companies on earth. And I think the story is incredibly important because even though he's not American, he's Austrian. He lived something like the American dream, from employee to billionaire, and did that with just one brilliant idea. And as we go through this, you'll see a lot of his ideas actually interact well together. So he has this really unique, but I would say cohesive company building philosophy that is completely unique to his personality, and the way he wants to live his life. Like you said, he could have taken it public. He could have sold out. He's just like, I just want to have fun. I'm making plenty of money. Somehow I think I'll survive making $800 million a year. And I never want to stop because I'm having fun. And so he was working on Red Bull up until he died. So before I jump into how he views Red
This guy
Bull,
seems
as
like
he
he had
calls
a
it, a
good time
marketing
building this
conglomerate,
company too.
I want to go over what they talked about, they hinted at in that article, just how private and secretive and how he was just obsessed with controlling the message. He's just a very private person. He was always promoting Red Bull and never promoting himself. And so the author of this book, and I apologize, I'm butchering all these names. I've already mispronounced that. I don't know, like half a dozen things. His name is Wolfgang for Weger. I'm just going to call him Wolfgang. So he actually runs into, as he's writing the book, he actually has a chance encounter with Dietrich, and he tells him that he's writing a biography on him. And Dietrich does not like that. And there's going to be some wild stuff here. He is neither interested in an authorized biography or in a case history about Red Bull. I was able to have a brief personal conversation with him. And when he found out that he wanted to write a book on him, he described the publication of a book that he had not authorized as, quote, a disaster. So you and I have talked about this maxim over and over again, very common in the history of entrepreneurship. Bad boys move in silence. They find an advantage. They don't like broadcasting how successful they are, and they certainly don't want to tell you what their next move is. And so this entire book, right, it says there's a strict prohibition of discussing internal matters. So if you are an employee of Red Bull, you can't say anything about what's going on. So most of the people interviewed in the book are actually former employees of Red Bull, but this is fascinating. They unanimously, these people have left the company, right? But they unanimously express positive opinions about their former employer. He is universally described as a person with great charisma. So the way he is with employees and people he knows is very different than the way he is with journalists. With journalists, he's extremely shy and reserved. And the few times he's done interviews, he's done some with like these European publications. He did one with The Economist, with Bloomberg. This is what he says about that. My philosophy is very simple. Since it's not me on the shelf for sale, but Red Bull, it's perfectly logical that Red Bull is at the center of our marketing activities and not the person. Naturally, I also have a pronounced desire for privacy. And then we see he utilizes an idea that you and I talked about on episode 292, is unavailable. And so even though Mateschitz was one of the greatest promoters that we've probably seen in the last half a century, public relations was not a part of the company's marketing strategy. And the interviews that to prevent me from appearing in it is to own it. And so this is tied to his very strong desire. He wants to control the message. He wants to tell his own story. That's why he's so heavy in them being available in all forms of media. But he's also a perfectionist who has to control his projects, the product that he's making, and the environment 100%. And so extreme success usually comes from extreme characters, extreme personality traits. He actually threatened to have, this is way before this book was actually written about him, but there was another potential biographer, this Russian author, that tried to start writing a biography, an unauthorized biography on Mateschitz. And Mateschitz threatened to have his kneecaps broken. He didn't like that the author was going to like his hometown.
This is crazy just thinking about it. So you guys are getting the inside scoop here. This guy, it's so interesting. He clearly was a master of marketing, master of promoting, a master of building an image. But when it comes to his personal life, he had so much privacy to the point where he was willing to go to extreme measures to kind of keep it quiet. Very interesting. So you're kind of in the inside circle here. Not many people probably know his story.
I think
This
he was
just
like
came
knocking
out.
on the door of his elderly mother. And it says, this aroused the wrath of the otherwise charming Mateschitz. You've harassed my mother, and I will not tolerate this. As long as a perforated kneecap in Moscow costs $500, you will not be safe. And so let's go into what he was doing before he started Red Bull. This is one of the most fascinating things because, as far as I know, it's his first business that he started, and he was 41 years old. He was an employee for Unilever. But way before that, what's fascinating, he calls himself like a very lazy student.
Oh, so you
So
got
he
started
actually
kind of
chose
late.
marketing as his major, and it was perfect because he's one of the greatest marketers I've ever seen. But he had to work his way through college. He was actually working at like a steelworks company, and he'd also take jobs as a ski instructor and a tour guide. But he didn't think he was that good at school. Becomes a marketing director for the international division of a Unilever subsidiary called Blendex. It's toothpaste. He's marketing toothpaste. And he did this for a very long time. He wound up traveling all the time for work. And this is how he's going to discover Red Bull, which I mentioned earlier. So he's on the road 3 to 4 months per year. Often they're sending him all the way out to the Far East. He's all over Asia. And it might have been fun as a younger man, but as he ages, he did not want to live that life of this frequent flyer, never home. And he has this realization where he said in an interview one time, all I could see were the same gray planes, the same gray suits, and the same gray faces. I wondered if I wanted to spend the next decade like this. And so he's around 38 years old when he's having this thought, like I don't want to be 48 and still in the same position. And really what motivated him, this is something he was going to repeat over and over again. He desperately wanted independence. He wanted financial independence, and he wanted independence and control over how he spent his time. And so it's at the same time that he's having these thoughts that he finds that Thai version, the uncarbonated version of Red Bull, gives him a lot of energy and cures his jet lag, and then reads the article. It's like, wait a minute, the people that make drinks like this pay the most, they make the most money, they pay the most taxes in this entire country. And so he immediately starts to study the existing products in this very nascent energy drink market. And he would literally grab every single samples of every single kind of drink that's very similar. He would get together with other people that he works with, and he organized them what he would call energy drink parties. And at the time, they were calling them stimulating juices. So these stimulating juices were all like essentially taste tested. And there was like this giant like self experiment to see not only how it tastes, but they both agree to put in $500,000 and then carbonate and then sell this drink in the West. And one main theme that runs through this entire story that's very obvious when you read about him, whether you read articles, a book, anything you come across. He has profound self-belief because when he's 41, he quits his job and starts his first company and puts all of the money that he has in it. He doesn't have this like large buffer. He doesn't have a lot of money. And even from the very beginning, and the reason I think I say you have to have a profound self-belief, because there's you can see brochures that he was like pitching people on about like the business. I think he might have been using this to try to raise money. But he says there is no market for Red Bull. We will create one. And there's this great line in the English translation of this German biography where it says, rarely in the world of business has such a bold announcement been implemented into reality like this one. And so creating your own market is also, not only do you have to educate, the potential customers, but then you have to deal with all the regulators. And so he tries to set up shop in Germany, and they didn't even know what the hell an energy drink was. And so he applied for what was going to be the first ever Europe-wide approval of a new type of indulgence, which is the energy drink, right? As you might imagine, European bureaucracy is not known for fast approval time. So he's waiting over a year to try to launch just in Germany. He gets extremely frustrated. So then he winds up packing his bags and going to Austria. And he's like, I'm just going to launch in Austria. There's a lot of benefits from that. But it also, one of the main benefits is he launched in a single small market. And for nearly 5 years, he was able to run experiments and really improve the product, but also figure out the marketing and the messaging because he's only in a single small market. So I think he launches in 1987 in Austria and doesn't launch to his second market till 1992. So they're launching in just one small market. They don't have a lot of money. They just put up, $500,000 each. It's not like mateschitz has any other money. And so when sales didn't take off, he did something that was really smart. He invested some of that money instead of in advertising at the very beginning. He actually made more of his product, and he would bring it and deliver it to places by pallet and let people try it and drink it free of charge. This is very similar to one of my favorite entrepreneurs of all time is Estee Lauder. And in the early days of her company, which she also started when she was 40, I just realized that now, she actually took money out of her advertising budget and instead made more of her product to give away. And this is what she said about that. You give people a product to try. If they like it, it's quality, then they buy it. They haven't been lured in by an advertisement, but convinced by the product itself. We took the money we had planned to use on advertising and invested it instead in enough material to give away large quantities of our product. It was so simple that our competitors sneered when they heard what they were doing. Today, they're all copying us. And so mateschitz knew he needed more money. He went to a bunch of banks. They all said no. Only one. There was a small private bank. Oh my goodness. Spangler. I'm butchering these words, but this bank called, I'm going to call it Spangler, was the only one to actually believe in the product and the concept behind it. And so they actually lent him money. Now, this is another main theme that's repeated over and over again. Mateschitz is excessively loyal. And so to this day, that is the only banking house that Red Bull used in that country. This is where they get the early start. Red Bull started to flourish when bartenders and nightclub operators were convinced that it was a suitable new component for mixed drinks. The energy drink was sometimes referred to as poor man's cocaine. So this spreading in nightclubs and bars actually gives them their initial traction. The first year they sell about several 100,000 cans were sold in the first year. The next year, that number goes to 1.2 million. And then the year after, so year 3, they're at 1.7 million. So they're growing, but they're not, growing crazy fast. They're also spending a ton. This is when they really start putting a lot of their money. I think it's something like over 30% of their gross revenue they spend on advertising. At the beginning, it was even more than that. But the remarkable thing is they hit their break-even point in year 3, and they've been profitable every single year since. That revenue from people spending more money on it to actually reinvest into advertising. Red Bull was to become very expensive, and it was a new product for which there was not even a market yet.